Foundation, who will be talking to us about the Ramon Foundation and the Rakia mission. How you doing today, Ran?
Fantastic. It's great to be here.
Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Ran Livne. I'm the Director General of the Ramon Foundation. I was a close partner with Tel Aviv University throughout the years. The foundation was founded by Rona Ramon, the late Rona Ramon, in 2010 after Asaf Ramon's tragic death in Israeli Air Force. He was an Israeli Air Force pilot and he died in a plane crash in an accident. The foundation is doing lots of education work in Israel, as well as in the world, in Singapore, in Chile, in some parts of Africa, and also empowering the Israeli space ecosystem, working with Israeli startups, entrepreneurs, and researchers.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And I'd just like to remind everyone that this campaign is in honor of Ilan Ramon, Israel's first astronaut. And this all started, the whole campaign was launched on his birthday earlier this year. Also with us today, we're delighted to have Professor Yoav Yair, Dean of the School of Sustainability at the Reichman University, who's going to be talking to us about his research, Chasing Lightning Sprites from Space, Heritage of the MEIDEX and ELAN-ES projects. How are you today, Professor?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for hosting me. Yes, we are going to launch with Eitan Stiva a wonderful experiment that was initiated by the late Ilan Ramon on the MEIDEX campaign on board Space Shuttle Columbia in 2003. I'm an atmospheric physicist. Together with Colin, we did our masters together. Me and Colin, we go a long way back, and we do a lot of science together. We work together. My specialty is lightning research on Earth and other planets. And I have a small surprise to tell the audience, but I will keep it to my talk later.
Perfect. We're looking forward to it. I'm sure there'll be some shocking discoveries. Sorry. And with that, let's get right to the presentations. I'm going to pass it off right away to Ran Livne to present to us the Ramon Foundation and the Rakia mission.
Okay, just before saying that, maybe I should have said it before. It's really exciting for me as an individual and exciting for the Ramon Foundation to partner with this amazing endeavor of the Ilan Ramon nanosatellite. First of all, Ilan is a Tel Aviv University graduate, and Yoav maybe talk a little bit about it later. And he was very close to the university. Second, on a personal level, today is September 23, 2021. Exactly a decade ago, I finished being Tel Aviv University student body board chairman. I was the chairman of the student union exactly a decade ago. It was very exciting. So it's really amazing for me to talk to Tel Aviv University friends now. Let's get to the presentation, just a minute. Any of you ever been in any space talks know that it's much harder to have the Zoom working and the presentation working than to put the Soyuz on the hatch of the International Space Station. So as I mentioned, we are the Ramon Foundation, named after this man, Ilan Ramon. The foundation was initiated by the late Rona Ramon in order to do what Ilan Ramon would have done if he would come back from the Columbia STS-107 mission. And that is to do lots of education, to work with researchers, to enlarge and empower the Israeli space ecosystem, basically to inspire. Ilan wasn't an ordinary astronaut. We won't deep dive into it now, but he took very special items with him to the ISS. And any time that we were meeting with his NASA friends and colleagues, all of them are talking about a man that had a mission to fulfill. He wanted to come back to Israel, a very difficult and complicated part of the world, and basically to do lots of good things here in education, research, and endorsement. And this was the vision of the late Rona Ramon, our founder. And today I was asked to give you around 10 minutes about the Rakia mission, the second Israeli in space mission, which is very unique in the way that it's being conducted and facilitated. Basically, this is the first human spaceflight mission that's being run by a non-profit. And usually I'm starting this presentation with a question. Who do you think of when you hear the word astronaut? Usually you guys think about people like Ilan Ramon or Neil Armstrong or Yuri Gagarin or any other national astronaut. But the thing that's really interesting, that the entire space ecosystem, global space ecosystem, global space industry is now shifting from national to private. And basically we are now at the break or at the dawn of the age of private astronauts. As you probably heard, the last SpaceX mission, human spaceflight called Inspiration 4, took 4 private astronauts into orbit. They just landed a few days ago, and it was funded by a billionaire. And basically he tried to raise awareness to children's cancer and to raise money through it. But the thing is that until today, less than 600 people left Earth into orbit and went to space. Most of them were sent by nations. But in the next decade, decade, we'll see over 100 private astronauts that will be launching to orbit. So the way that you guys are thinking about astronauts is, if they will you can only be an astronaut if a nation choose you, is going to change. Commercialization was the biggest trend of the global space industry in the last 2 decades. Players like SpaceX, Blue Origin, Planet, etc. Most of the satellites today are not being owned by governments, but by private companies, research institutes. And now the global trend is that this industry, if there were 2 verticals that haven't been private yet, which are space research, you don't see private companies that are sending, I don't know, lunar orbiters or spacecraft to Mars, and you don't see private companies that sending astronauts. This is going to change in the next decades. We have lots of players who are going to send private astronauts. One of them is Axiom. We met them about 5 years ago, and we realized the fact that we have an opportunity to send a private astronaut that will follow the footsteps of Ilan Ramon into orbit. We're partnered with Axiom, which is an American space company that's going to is now building a new space station that will probably replace the International Space Station, and now planning to send astronauts into the ISS. And this is mainly the Rakia mission. The Ramon Foundation tried to raise money in order to choose an astronaut. We hope that it would be the first Israeli female astronaut. And nevertheless, we haven't succeeded in it yet. We found Eitan Stiba, who is a very close friend with the Ramon Foundation. Eitan is an Israeli philanthropist, very close to Ilan Ramon. We flow with him. If you read his Wikipedia page, you'll realize that he's a very decorated Israeli aircraft pilot. He founded one of the world's biggest impact investment funds, Vital Capital. He's a member of the World Economic Forum. He's one of the founders of the Ramon Foundation. He was very close with Ilan, and actually the foundation was founded on his porch after Asaf Ramon's death. And he's an Israeli philanthropist who partnered with numerous universities, and his long-time dream was to go into space. And basically, when we realized that there is a price tag to go to space, we approached Eitan in order for him to consider it. And his main idea was to try to donate his time in space for Israeli science, education, and arts. Now, you have to realize that this is a very significant donation, because what Professor Yair or Professor Price will tell you, that astronaut hours or astronaut time in space is very valuable, mainly for researchers, for educators, and for entrepreneurs. This private astronaut endeavor is going to, it has unrivaled opportunities for Israeli space. Think about it this way. One astronaut in space has the potential to create hundreds of projects directly and indirectly, for engineers, for professors, for scientists, for entrepreneurs, for teachers. And the idea, this is actually a slide that we presented Eitan when he considered this, was to provide startups and researchers astronaut hours, flight opportunity to the ISS, which means that if he'll be on the ISS for approximately 200 hours, he could benefit Israeli researchers and Israeli educators, because this way he will have access to the ISS scientific and technical platform, and we will be able to utilize these platforms for the benefit of different research institutes in Israel. He'll be able to inspire generations in Israel next generation to enter science, technology, and engineering disciplines, because he'll be able to carry out lesson plans that we'll design, and thus increase the number of scientists in Israel and to improve our nation's future technical workforce, which is quite important. The impact is unrivaled. Basically, these are the different human spaceflight missions that impacted different nations, but we anticipate that we'll have approximately 35% increase in the numbers of space companies and entrepreneurs in Israel. And I would assume that there will be also dozens or hundreds of scientific articles that will be carried out by the researchers that participate in these missions. We initiated this space mission at President Rivlin's residence, the former Israeli president, about a year ago. And what basically we try to do, since we are a non-profit, is to create this very unique public-private partnership, which means that we're working in line with the Israeli Space Agency, with the Israeli Ministry of Innovation, Technology, and Science. And we're basically trying to carry out an open source or to co-create a scientific and education and art mission through the Rakia mission. We basically we did a conference, and we opened up a call for scientists and asked them to present us with ideas to do scientific experiments or to do technology demonstrations aboard the ISS. 44 different experiments and technology demonstration were handpicked by the scientific technology committee that elected them. And we're hoping to carry out around 31 different experiments, which is quite a lot. Just to compare it, the Emirati astronaut from the UAE had almost no budget limitations, and he conducted in a 10-day mission around 14 different experiments, and here we're planning to double this amount. And the other thing that's quite exciting is the connection between science and education. Now you have to realize that while Ilan Ramon was in space in 2003, there was no social media, and there was almost no live streaming from the International Space Station. Here we're planning to leverage Eitan's Day in order to do lots of STEM and arts classes from space. And this is the vision of Ramon to try to connect between space and education. The International Space Station is the most advanced class in the world. Think about it. I don't know, you see here the spinners, that was really neat. So 2 years ago, so here you can see astronauts that are demonstrating how a spinner acts in space. They can show physics basics through space. You can see here a human spinner, astronaut Joe Akaba, and here's Randy Bresnik, that's also conducting science and teaching children throughout. And this is very exciting. Here I have to admit that also we opened the gate for educators. We sent 2 polls throughout the Israeli education systems in order for different education teams from throughout the country to offer us with ideas that Eitan will be able to create. This is very unique. This has never been carried out. I was speaking to the new NASA director, Senator Nelson, just appointed by Joe Biden. We presented him with the concept, and he said, wow, this is brilliant. So I've been following NASA since the 60s, 70s, and I've never seen such a space mission that's been, first of all, carried out by a non-profit, trying that have the essence of co-creating and opening space to different players. And this is quite also the essence of the International Space Station. Ilan Ramon was on a space shuttle. He never visited the International Space Station. And the International Space Station is all about collaboration between different nations and all about the synergetic relations between entrepreneurship, research, and education. And on this beautiful picture, I would like to know that the project that Yoav is going to talk about is probably the most unique project that's going to be carried out during Eitan's stay aboard the ISS, because it has science, it has innovation, it has education, and it has also international collaboration. So I won't spoil Yoav's presentation, but aside of trying to, taking the legacy of Ilan Ramon, who carried out an experiment that the experiments of Ilan ES and the Ilan Ramon nanosatellites are basically following the footsteps of the historic experiment that Ilan did on the Columbia STS-107. It also have all of the ingredients for a very successful and inspiring project in the global collaboration and the education. So Yoav, I think I kind of opened up the door for you, and let's see See you entering it.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation, Ran. Really looking forward to seeing how this mission turns out and everything, all the scientific research and results that come from it. I just have one quick question for you. One of the focuses of the Ramon Foundation is to really help support youth education. And around this mission, youth education around space is extremely important in the mission of Rakia. Why is it important for youth to take an interest in space today and now?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the last sentence?
Why is it important for the youth of today to take an interest in space now?
I'll tell you, I came to the Ramon Foundation 6.5 years ago, and I think that the best scientific article that I read since joining the foundation was not about space technology, it was about education. It was written by an anthropologist, actually a sociologist, and he tried to study the alumni of MIT. And he looked for patterns in the alumni of MIT about people who are doing science or technology in their day-to-day life. So if you're the marketing in Apple, you don't do technology in your day-to-day. Nevertheless, if you're calling price and you're doing research or you're an engineer in Intel Israel, you are doing technology. And he found this pattern. He realized the fact that all of the people, or around 95% of the alumni who've been doing technology and science for a living, all of them have two characteristics that are very clear. The first thing is that they were inspired by science in a very young age, less than 14. It doesn't matter if it was their teacher, a museum, or whatever. And the second thing is that they had a very good teacher. So I took my child today to see the stars in a planetarium in Netanya, in Israel. And I think it really inspired her. And this is why the Ramon Foundation is trying to work with youth and trying to work with teachers a lot. Because basically our nation, and I think that the world now depends on technology more than ever. If you can see, and research, obviously. I mean, if you can see what's happening with COVID, at the end of the day, we have to rely on science in order to understand our planet, in order to find cure for diseases, to find better food, and to benefit. So this is our main focus, and this is why I think it's so important.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And with that, excuse me. And with that, we'll pass it off to Professor Yoav Yair to tell us a little bit about lightning in space. So, Professor, it's off to you.
Yeah, thank you. Did you enable me sharing my screen? I suppose you did. All right. So, you know, I prepared this talk, and let me go back. Okay. So the title Ilan ES is, you know, it encapsulates Ilan's name, but it's actually an acronym. Imaging of lightning and nocturnal emissions from space. And you can see here an image taken from the ISS, surrounded by a blue circle of what Colin and I have been researching for more than 15 years. Transient luminous events, very brief, bright and beautiful emissions of light that occur within Earth's atmosphere above very active thunderstorms. So I will give you just a brief overview. I know this is not a scientific talk, but I can't help myself. I always try to educate people a little bit about physics, because if you want to understand how this planet works, you have to get some ideas about the mechanisms that are working within our atmosphere. And when you look at lightning, you always say, okay, so I know what lightning looks like. I see it outside my window when there's a thunderstorms. Hopefully we'll get this year's first thunderstorm tonight in Israel. But other than that, there are approximately a couple of hundreds, maybe 1,000 active thunderstorms as we speak, with a global flash rate of 40 lightning strokes per second, 40 to 50. And these thunderstorms are very, very sensitive to the climate and to the Earth temperature and humidity. And so by monitoring lightning and their impacts on the upper atmosphere, you actually get a sense of what the planet is feeling. It's like a proxy to the climate of Earth, and Colin has several publications of that. And so we are looking at lightning and sprites from space in order to gauge actually the state of the planet, if you wish. So this is not new, but there is some new stuff. I just show you the camera that we will use on board the ISS, Eitan does not need to buy or bring a camera of his own. They are already up there being used by astronauts. This is an image, a long exposure image that shows you, of course, the stars. These are the circles that you see, but at the bottom part, you can see those many blue or whitish kind of spots, and these are lightning. So when you're flying above Central Africa, and please take a mental note, Central Africa, we'll be back to that, you see that the planet is actually pulsating with lightning, a huge amount of flashes, and Africa is the continent that has the most active thunderstorms on the planet, seeded by South America and then Southeast Asia. And some of those lightning are accompanied by what we now know are luminous events, very brief, very short, 10 milliseconds, 20 milliseconds, but they are huge in size, couple of tens of kilometers. So they occupy a huge volume in the stratosphere and mesosphere, and they shine in many lights. So these are beautiful, I would say, animals that briefly appear in the sky above thunderstorms and disappear. But they tell us a lot about a very important electrical connection between Earth below and space above. And it tells us a little bit about the chemistry of the mesosphere, about the ozone layer. And there are many aspects that if you study TLEs, transient luminous events, you may get understanding of what's going on below the Earth. So this is one of the raison d'etre that we are looking for TLEs. And recently it's been discovered that lightning emits very energetic particles, gamma particles, which can be associated with TLEs. And those TGF, terrestrial gamma ray flashes that you see in the animation on the left, have many impacts. Maybe they can produce greenhouse gases through chemistry, producing NOx in the upper atmosphere. Maybe they can interfere with airplane safety because gamma radiation is very energetic and can penetrate easily into the cockpit of flying jets. These are all issues that can be related to the research Ilan ES is achieving. Let me just give you the heritage of what was Ran mentioning, and Colin and I, as part of the MEDEX experiment, Mediterranean Israeli Dust Experiment, that was selected by NASA and the Israeli Space Agency back in 1998. So the main project, as you know, was dust, study of dust. But me and Colin came up with the idea that, hey, we have this wonderful camera that you can see here on the slide in space, and an astronaut to operate it. And half of the time in orbit, you are on the night side of the planet. Why don't we look for something that can, keep Ilan busy at night? And that is how we came up with this TLE hunt, sprite hunting from space. But in order to maximize the viewing time that we had been allocated by NASA, we had to come up with a very sophisticated weather prediction, but not local, not just Tel Aviv and the region. We are talking a global scheme of, forecasting where lightning will occur, combining it with our knowledge of the shuttle orbit and calculating where Ilan should point his camera. And if that fits within his timeline, as you can see below, this is just a single page of the Columbia mission timeline. And if you have good eyes, you may see S1 is Ramon, and this is what experiments that he did, and among them, MEDEX sprites. So we were looking at sprites, and I can tell you that we were, modesty aside, we were very good at predicting where lightning occurs, and with pointing the Columbia crew to image them from space. By the way, the commander of STS-107, Rick Husband, decided that not only Ilan will do MEDEX, but 6 other crew members did it. So Ilan and another 5 astronauts did those observations, and you can see some of the results here. I guarantee you that those black and white images that are not so, fascinating for us, these were moments of true joy as scientists, when Ilan and his colleagues were able to image those phenomena, which I can tell you last a millisecond or 10 milliseconds, you do not see them by eyes. It's just point the camera, shoot, and we on the ground will do the rest. And this is actually what my request to Eitan will be. Just, you're an F-16 pilot, so you know how to maneuver and put the camera. Just shoot them down, and we will analyze the data. So this is an image from MADEX back in 2003. I can tell you the left-hand side image is donut of light, which we call ELF. This is the first, I think maybe the last time, that my name was a small item within the New York Times that was published back on January 19th, when we discovered our first ELF, and it was Astronaut imaging strange light in the sky. Sell more copies by using the word strange. But we were extremely excited and MADEX was extremely successful. The degree that I was asked to repeat it twice again, first in 2011 as part of JAXA, Japanese Space Agency Cosmic Shore campaign. And you can see Dr. Satoshi Furukawa, who is actually a medical doctor, but we trained him in the same way that we pointed Ilan and other Columbia astronauts to those thunderstorm targets. And he did wonderful work. And he had the Japanese camera much better than we did, a high definition color camera. So for the first time, we were able to image sprites from space in color. And I won't go into the details, but there were some firsts in his campaign, which lasted more than a week. I would say we got like a total, maybe more than an hour of total observation time. As Ron mentioned, this is a very expensive asset to have astronaut dedicated time in space. So you have to use every minute that you can use, and we did that. And I repeated the same concept by the invitation of the European Space Agency for the THOR mission in 2015. You can see Andy Mogensen, first astronaut of Denmark, riding the chariots of Thor, the god of thunder. I'm sure your kids know this superhero from the Marvel movies. But ESA allocated 15 minutes within the 9 days that he was in orbit. We only got 15 minutes, but that was enough because you can pinpoint the target such that those 10 or 15 minutes in space with a camera, with the eyes and the brains of a human astronaut. When we flew over the Bay of Bengal in India, there was a huge thunderstorm, and what Andy was able to image was these blue lights, flickering lights, totally new phenomena that was discovered and published with my Danish colleagues. But even 10 minutes can give you something wonderful. And so this is my plan, our plan for the Ilan ES. It's a new adventure. I'm sure we will succeed. We have many science objectives. I don't think we will go one by one, but the bottom line is that if you have a trained astronaut and you have a good ground crew that can tell him when and where to look, we are bound to succeed. And of course, I'm not satisfied with just doing this from space. We will have an international campaign of ground observers at the same time. Plus, we have a Danish payload on the ISS working with us in tandem together. It's called ASIM, the Atmosphere Space Interaction Monitor. So we will have astronaut pointing camera, a robotic camera looking from above, and we have ground observers all around the world, including Israel and African schools. And this is the surprise I'm going to tell you about. So this is what I envision for Eitan Stiva, who, by the way, served with me in the Israeli Air Force. We were both training in pilot school. I did not finish, but he did. So we know each other for a long time, and we met in many, many occasions. So he will use this camera and look through the windows of the computer and do the video mode of the Nikon D5, and we will get us those images. And as I said, we will plan to give a 36-hour forecast time, telling him exactly through mission control, Axiom, and NASA, that day from now is use this time window. We need a couple of minutes of your time above Tasmania because there's a huge storm there. And I already forecast you know, in Australia in winter, and Colin can vouch for me. There's always this huge thunderstorm above Northern Australia. It doesn't have a name. It's called Hector. So we know Hector will be in early winter when we will fly over Australia. So I'm positive that we will shoot it down. So yeah, this is what we plan. This is our ground campaign. So we have colleagues in China, in India, or of course, Europe, in Brazil, and Puerto Rico, the Caribbean, and cameras all over that will coordinate with us. And we have 11 schools in Israel. And now we have additional 5 or 6 schools in Africa. And yesterday I had a Zoom call with the Israeli ambassador to Rwanda. And in Rwanda, we have 3 schools that were erected after the genocide in 1994 through a donation of an American Jewish lady. And these 3 schools are teaching orphans from the genocide science and giving them education. And the ambassador said, okay, I am choosing those schools, and we will have additional schools that Eitan's foundation, the Vital Foundation, will give us in Ghana and Botswana and Zimbabwe. So for the first time ever, as strange as it may seem, we will have ground-based observations of lightning and sprites from the continent of Africa. So I'm really excited about this. I'm going to pay for the camera for my research money at IDC, at Reichman University. Of course, if you are willing to donate more money, we can get more African schools. It's an exciting experiment that will involve schools both in Israel and in Africa. And I have a student at IDC from Rwanda, and I have an Israeli Arab student who will coordinate between the Ramon Foundation, the Israeli schools, the African schools. It's going to be an adventure. And my sole request to Eitan is, go and get them for us.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Yoav. That was, it was a little shocking at certain points, I have to admit. I know, especially the images of the lightning, like the image that it creates, that was actually beautiful and inspiring to see. I have lots of questions, but I'm going to pass it off to Colin Price, who's going to be leading the panel discussion, because we're here to hear from the experts. And so, Colin, off to you, and have a great panel, everyone.
Great. Well, thanks to Ran and Yoav for those great presentations. Before we start, I'd like to first thank the Canadian Friends of Tel Aviv University for also providing financial support for our project on the Rakia mission. Our cameras some of the cameras we're buying for the Israeli schools and supporting a student to work have been funded by Canadian Friends. So we're very grateful for the kind and generous support for the project. Every experiment going up with Eitan Steve needs to find funding. And so without funding, we wouldn't be able to actually do this experiment, even though it was approved by the Ramon Foundation. So thank you for that. I'd like to start with Ran, and maybe I'll actually go to a more personal question first. How did you get involved in space? I understand that you have a degree more in business, and you're a good manager, but you're not a scientist and you're not a space guy. So how did you get involved in space?
Yeah, well, usually when people ask me, well, what's my background? So I'm always telling them that I was the chairman of the student union in Tel Aviv University, and that my BA is in sociology and literature, actually. But I did lots of social internship and social innovation in Tel Aviv University, and I have an MBA, as you mentioned. And I was a business consultant, and what happened to me is that basically I met Rona Ramon, and at the time they were looking for someone that will be able to manage the nonprofit. And this is how I came into space. I didn't know a lot about space 7-8 years ago. Today I'm I don't know, considered to be an expert, but Still, I don't have a technical background. I'm an international university alumni. I did some courses there. What's interesting here is that the global space industry utterly changed, and basically the barriers for entry really lowered. So people are looking for all sorts of people from all different backgrounds in most of the new space companies, and also in research and in different companies. I mean, think about it this way: all of the space, the amazing, inspiring. This is the leading space program in the Israeli Academy. This is being run from the environmental studies school in Tel Aviv University, not necessarily from physics. And this is mainly because the space is interdisciplinary, and also, if I may add, intercultural. So you need to have people that are being able to enjoy all of the worlds.
Okay, great. Yoav, Yoav mentioned that both myself and Yoav knew Ilan Ramon and worked with Ilan Ramon on the MADEX program. And so my question to Yoav is, how does the Ilan ES campaign continue the legacy of the MADEX from 2003?
I think I made it clear that we are continuing in the footpath that was established in 2003, practically doing the same operational procedure of forecasting where lightning should be, and having a human astronaut, an Israeli, pointing the camera for us. I should say that although we got almost, I think, 70% of what Ilan and his friends recorded on board the shuttle, we don't have all the data. Some of it was lost. There's a feeling of non-closure that already we achieved most of our science goals. There's this bitter taste of we could have achieved more. And so I hope that Eitan will continue exactly where the Columbia crew finished and pick it up to the next level. We added some more sophisticated science objectives that had not been part of the MIDEX. And you know, science is like a spiral. You come back to where you were, but you go one step farther, and then you go higher and higher. And so emotionally, I feel this is offering a closure for the tragedy of Columbia and for Ilan's mission. And I expect Eitan to do wonderful things in space, and sharing his time with us, as Ran had said, is like a gift. I did not believe, after so many years, that I will ever have the chance to work with a person in space again. And so when the Ramon Foundation announced this open call, Colin and I had a 2-minute discussion. Should we submit? Are we going to do it? Yes, definitely. And we did it. And I'm happy that the scientific value was obvious to the scientific committee of the Ramon Foundation, that they chose us to fly. By the way, Colin, I should tell you that I got an email yesterday, and our colleagues from Denmark said that after they heard that Ilan ES is going to the station in February, they're going to submit to the European Space Agency a request to repeat the same experiment that was done in 2015. So as Ram mentioned in his answer to you, it's like a ripple effect. You do something, and then others join you, and then you have international effects that you didn't anticipate, and certainly educational ones. We can maybe talk a little bit about more.
I have to put in and to tell a little bit behind the scenes that we knew that we need a scientific committee, and basically we had professors from all different universities, and obviously Professor Ayer and Professor Price were on the short list. And I basically told Eitan, no, they can't be on the committee. They have to have follow-up experiments for the MADEX. I know them; they will want to take pictures of lightnings from space. It has to be it. And it was, yeah, so it's inevitable, and it's going to be phenomenal.
Ron, how did you actually choose the name Rakia? Maybe you can also explain the meaning for people who don't understand Hebrew.
So first of all, we didn't have a name. The name of the entire mission called the AX1. X1 is the short, X is Axiom, and 1 is the first human spaceflight mission of Axiom space. The Israeli part is called Rakia. We didn't have a name. We asked the Israeli public to send us names. You can see here Melody Coleman, maybe she'll correct me if I'm wrong, but there was around 500 names. We narrowed it down onto 3 different names, and we did a shortlist of 10, and then Eitan and his family and our team choose 3 names, Rakia, Aluma, and the third one I don't recall. And then we did basically a poll. We did a survey. We asked children from all across the country to handpick one, and they chose Rakia. Rakia is the biblical word for sky or for horizon. On the second day in the Bible, God generates Rakia. One of the songs that Rona picked different songs for Ilan to hear in space, and one of them was Imagine by John Lennon. And she translated it into Hebrew and starts with Imagine there's no heaven above us, only sky. So she translated as Me'alenu rak Rakia. This was also Me'alenu rak Rakia, above us only sky, was also the name of when Rona published Ilan and Asaf's diaries. She named them above us only sky, Me'alenu rak Rakia. So it was kind of significant and symbolic that the Israeli picked this name. So it's nice.
Okay, you're going back to the scientific mission. What do you expect to find that has not been already found by other Sprite missions, both from above and below?
Yeah, so, let me quote one of our colleagues, Victor Pasco from Penn State University. And he said, everything is possible when you have a new instrument in space. So I would expect to be surprised by Eitan's performance in space, that he will get us something new that no one had seen before. This is a bit ambitious, but to be honest, we added a new complex kind of target, which is what we call conjugate event, is that if you have a thunderstorm in one part of the world, it can shoot up into space and ejecting particles that would follow the magnetic line and impinge on the opposite hemisphere, and maybe create sprites that are generated when there is no thunderstorm. So you will get light, but nothing below. If we get that, that's a new chapter in physics, I suppose. I'm going to attempt this. We know how to forecast what is the geomagnetic conjugate point. So for example, if we have a thunderstorm, very active lightning above Madagascar, the conjugate point would be near Cyprus. And so we will point the cameras to Cyprus, regardless if there is a thunderstorm or not, and look at the sky and hopefully they will shine some new light. So this is a new scientific objective that was not attempted in any mission before. And if we get that, that will be a first. And I am anticipating a lot of surprises, good ones. Even 10 minutes of targeted observations of lightning, you know that as well as I do, will get us wonderful, wonderful harvest.
Great. Ron, back to you. You mentioned in your talk the education and the link between science and education. I know you've got some really amazing programs at the Ramon Foundation with high school kids and some flagship projects sending experiments to the ISS every year. So can you say something about one or two of these projects you have with the kids in school related to space?
So yeah, I think that you mentioned Ramon Space Lab. So Ilan, one of his scientific experiments, he did lots of scientific experiments, but part of his vision was to try to get children more involved in space and in STEM studies in the STS-107 mission. So he also did a competition in collaboration with NASA and the Israeli government for Israeli middle schools to send them experiments into space. And we're following his footsteps, and we're doing a program called Ramon Space Lab, in which students are basically, it's a 2-year program for middle schools in Israel, and competing for sending experiments into orbit. In the last 5 years, I think we sent over 25 experiments. It's very interesting, considering to be one of the most advanced programs in the world that sends experiments into orbit. We have professors and entrepreneurs from all across the countries that are evaluating the children, including Professor Price and Professor Yair, and also including NASA astronauts and scientists from NASA. And the program, this is the first year that we're really engaging children from across the world. We're branding the program as Columbia Space Lab, named after the entire crew. We have schools in Singapore, in Ghana, in Chile that participates. It's quite interesting because the children have phenomenal ideas, and at least 3 experiments in the last 4 years also published scientific articles about their findings in the experiments.
Great. And the last question, going back to Yoav, since you work a lot with lightning and thunderstorms, what can you tell us about lightning on other planets outside the Earth, very briefly?
Yeah, okay. So we know that there are lightning occurring on other planets in the atmosphere of Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. They've been either optically directly observed or detected by the electromagnetic radiation emitted that some spacecraft detected. We are now a part of a Japanese missions orbiting around the planet Venus. There is a question of other lightning on Venus. And to follow up on this, we don't know yet. We haven't seen them. We saw some glimpse of bright something in the sky of Venus, but we're not sure. So we submitted it to Nature. Nature said, "Oh, you need to verify it." So we are looking out at the data. This is a Japanese satellite called Akatsuki, which means dawn, because Venus usually appears at dawn. By the way, if you look west tonight, you will see Venus on the western horizon. It's an evening star. So definitely there are planetary lightning, and where there are lightning, there are sprites. So we predicted a couple of years ago a theoretical paper studying the possibility of sprites on other planets, not only lightning, but sprites. And we had a PhD, a joint PhD student, Daria, who did actually laboratory experiments in the lab, predicting what the spectral signature of sprites on other planets would look like. And, it happens in science that you give a prediction and you forget about it. It's a paper we published in 2010. And last year, an American team with the spacecraft Juno orbiting around Jupiter, detected blue sprites in Jupiter, exactly as we predicted. So yes, it's physics, it's lightning. You do the right math, you have the right camera, you get it.
Great. Thanks, Yoav and Ran. I'll hand it back to Sharon and Noah to wrap things up for this evening, since we have only a few minutes left. So thanks both of you, and I'll pass it back to Noah, to Sharon.
Well, thank you all. Thank you all again for your participation and your time today. It really has been an inspiring talk, and I hope everybody that's joined us today has learned a lot. And with that, I will pass it over to Sharon Frankel to close today off. Thanks again.
Thank you very, very much, everyone. Professor Price, Professor Yair, Ran, thank you so much for these informative insights into the Ramon Foundation, the upcoming Rakia mission, as well as the Elan ES project, which will continue the legacy of the MIDEX project from 2003 in Ilan Ramon's memory. Good afternoon, everyone. Shana Tova and Chag Sameach. My name is Sharon Frankel. I'm the Executive Director of CFTAU for Ottawa, Quebec, and Atlantic Canada. It was Professor Price's last visit to Montreal in August of 2017, which inspired us to work on the idea known today as the Ilan Ramon Memorial Project. And at the time, Professor Price shared with us a vision at an event here of a future nanosatellite center at Tel Aviv University, showed us a small satellite prototype the size of a shoebox. And here we are today, 4 years later, with the first TAO satellite in space, in orbit, working, and we are here planning to develop and launch the next one. With our Reaching for the Stars campaign, which we launched, by the way, June 20th, on Ilan Ramon's birthday, we're now determined to raise funds to build the next nanosatellite at Tel Aviv University, not only to address global environment and climate change issues, but more importantly, to find solutions under the leadership of Colin Price at the just recently created Climate Change Center at the university. Please, we ask you, if you are interested in learning more and maybe getting involved in our campaign, to contact us by phone, by email. Both will be posted in the chat just now, and feel free to reach out to us at any time. I would like to personally invite you to attend also our next webinar, which is scheduled for October the 27th. We will be at that time meeting two incredible new Israeli startups and learn how they are working on producing oxygen and food on the moon and eventually on Mars in the future. We're working on other events and webinars, so stay tuned. We're planning something for November and December, as well as early 2022. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank our wonderful campaign executive group chair, as you met him throughout the webinar, Noah Redler. Thank you very much for everything that you do for us during this campaign. And we have a lot of exciting events and webinars planned. We still have about 18 months to go. So please sign up for our weekly newsletter if you don't receive it yet. And you can do that on our website, and look out for some very interesting announcements coming very soon. One is planned for the week of October the 4th. So in the meantime, again, I thank you for your participation today. I hope everybody had good holidays so far, and I wish you and your families a very happy and healthy continuation of the Chagim. Thank you very much. Toda rabba ve להתראות. Shalom.
Shalom. Goodbye.
Shalom.